Anything You Want, 40 Lessons for a New Kind of Entrepreneur by Derek Sivers. Imagine this. It's 2003. You've somehow stumbled into building a company that's becoming the darling of the independent music scene. You're helping thousands of musicians who couldn't catch a break. And honestly, you're doing it because you actually care. Then one day, you get invited to Apple headquarters. You walk into this small room, and suddenly, Steve Jobs himself appears. He's doing his thing, that signature presentation style, telling you and about 100 other small record labels that he wants you to be part of his shiny new iTunes music store. It feels surreal, like you're living in someone else's dream. But then everything goes sideways. A misunderstanding here, some heated phone calls there, radio silence for months. Meanwhile, your customers, those musicians you promised to help, are getting frustrated. You're starting to panic that you've let them down. Then one day, you're sitting at your computer watching Steve Jobs give a worldwide keynote speech. Someone asks him why iTunes doesn't have as much music as competing services. And he looks straight into the camera with this dismissive tone and says he doesn't want to let just anything onto his store. He mentions how some services will accept any song for a measly $40. He actually uses the word junk. Your stomach drops. Because you're the only one charging $40, he's talking about you. The most famous entrepreneur on the planet just called your life's work junk in front of millions of people. So what do? This is just one wild moment in the 10-year roller coaster of Derek Sivers, a guy who never even wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was perfectly happy as a professional musician when he started a tiny website to help out a few friends. That little favor somehow morphed into CD Baby, which he eventually sold for $22 million. Today, we're exploring his refreshingly short book, Anything You Want. This isn't one of those business books drowning in spreadsheets and corporate jargon. Actually, it's pretty much the opposite. It's a collection of real stories, honest mistakes, and thought-provoking ideas that will shake up everything you think you know about success. By the time we're done, you'll have a completely new way of thinking about your own dreams. One that points not just toward making money, but toward actually being happy, finding purpose, and creating your own version of a perfect world. So let's jump in. Our story begins not in some corporate office, but on a stage. It's 1997, and Derek Sivers is actually living his dream. At 27, he's making a living as a full-time musician, playing gigs, producing records, even working for a circus at one point. He's not wealthy, but he's getting by comfortably, and has even managed to buy a small house in Woodstock, New York. Life feels good. The last thing on his mind is starting a business. He's already found what he wants to do. He records a CD of his own music and figures he'll sell it online. Sounds simple, right? But back in those days, it definitely wasn't. The big online stores would only work with CDs from major distributors. And getting a distribution deal, that was its own nightmare. The whole system was designed for big record labels, a clunky, outdated mess where they'd take thousands of your CDs and maybe, if you were lucky, pay you a year later. Derek took one look at that system and said, no thanks. So he thought, all right, I'll just build my own online store. How complicated could it be? Turns out, very complicated. This was before PayPal existed, before easy e-commerce platforms. It cost him $1,000 in various fees and 3 months of bureaucratic paperwork just to get approved for a credit card merchant account. The bank even sent someone to his house to verify he was running a legitimate business. He had zero programming experience, so he bought a book and spent countless hours figuring things out through pure trial and error until finally he got a working shopping cart. Eventually, a simple Buy Now button appeared on his website. In 1997, that was actually a pretty big achievement. He mentioned it to his musician friends, and one of them casually asked, "Hey, could you sell my CD too?" Derek paused for a moment. "Sure," he said. "Why not?" He treated it as a favor. A couple hours of work, and his friend's CD was online. Then another friend asked, and another. Pretty soon, he was getting calls from complete strangers saying, "My friend Dave told me you could sell my CD." The requests just kept pouring in. This little side project, this favor for a handful of friends, was suddenly consuming all his time. He had accidentally become a business owner. But here's the thing. He didn't want to run a business. He was a musician. Everything else felt like a distraction. So he decided to try something unusual. To prevent this thing from spiraling out of control, he would approach it in a completely idealistic, almost naive way. He decided to intentionally keep it small. He sat down and, thinking from the perspective of a musician, wrote out what his absolute dream distribution deal would look like. It was a straightforward list of 4 things. First, pay me every week. None of this waiting a year for your money nonsense. Second, show me the name and address of everyone who buys my CD, because those are my fans, not the store's property. Third, never kick me out for slow sales. Even if I only sell 1 CD every 5 years, it should stay available for whoever might want to find it. And fourth, no paid placement. No letting rich record labels buy the premium spots on the website, because that's completely unfair to artists who can't afford it. That was his entire mission. He called it CD Baby. He wasn't trying to build the next big thing. He was just imagining how one small corner of the world could work perfectly. And here's his first profound lesson. When you create a business, you're essentially creating a tiny universe where you make all the rules. It's your utopia. And if you design it to be a dream come true for yourself, chances are it'll be a dream come true for others too. Now, what should he charge? He walked into the local record store in Woodstock and asked how they handled local music. The woman behind the counter said, "You set the price. We take a flat $4 cut. We pay you every week." That sounded reasonable to him, so he went home and put on his website, "You set the selling price. We keep a flat $4 cut. We pay you every week." He also added a one-time $25 setup fee to cover the time spent adding each new album. A few days later, he bumped it up to $35, just to give himself a bit more cushion. And that was literally his entire business model. 2 numbers, a $35 setup fee and a $4 cut per CD. 6 years and millions of dollars later, those were still the only 2 numbers running the entire operation. The lesson? The best plans are refreshingly simple. You don't need some massive document. Common sense should tell you if the numbers make sense. Everything else is just details. Years down the line, the media would call him a revolutionary who transformed the music industry. But Derek points out that revolution is just a label people slap on things after they succeed. Before that, you're just some quirky person doing things differently. We often think revolution needs to feel like warfare, all loud protests and dramatic confrontation. But if you think that way, you'll miss the quiet power of simply serving people better. When you're actually onto something great, it won't feel like a revolution. It'll just feel like common sense. For the first time in his life, Derek had created something people genuinely wanted. He'd spent years before that trying to promote his music, pushing, pitching, fighting uphill battles. It was always exhausting. But CD Baby was different. It was like he'd accidentally written a hit song. Suddenly, doors that had been locked were swinging wide open. Instead of trying to create demand, he was scrambling to keep up with it. This led him to an important insight about persistence. Everyone tells you to be persistent, but he realized he'd been thinking about it wrong. Success doesn't come from stubbornly promoting something that isn't resonating. It comes from persistently improving and innovating until you create something people are desperate for. If you put an idea out into the world and get a lukewarm response, don't just keep pushing harder. Go back to the drawing board. Make it better. Try something completely different. When you start hearing people say, "Wow, yes, I need this. I'd happily pay for this," that's when you know you're onto something. He condensed this into a powerful personal philosophy. No yes. Either hell yeah or no. When you're deciding whether to do something, take on a project, attend an event, commit your time, if you feel anything less than, "Wow, that would be amazing. Absolutely. Hell yeah! Then just say no. When you say no to most things, you create space in your life to fully commit to those rare opportunities that genuinely excite you. This flexible mindset proved essential because his original plan for CD Baby was completely off. He thought he was creating a simple credit card processing service, just a buy button for musicians, websites. But his second customer, a guy in the Netherlands, emailed him a week later asking, "Any new releases?" New releases? Derek was confused. Why would this person care about other musicians using the service? The customer explained, "Oh, sorry, I thought it was a store." A store? It seems so obvious now, but Derek hadn't thought of it that way. He suddenly realized that if he set it up like an actual store, he could help his musician friends even more by exposing their music to complete strangers. Just like that, his entire plan shifted. As entrepreneur Steve Blank famously said, "No business plan survives first contact with customers." A year after launching, the dot-com boom was in full swing. Investors were throwing millions at anyone with even a vague idea. Derek looks back now and feels incredibly grateful that he had zero funding. It turned out to be his biggest advantage. He'd see other business owners bragging about their second round of funding, their expensive servers, their 20-person development teams, their offices with pool tables. But when you asked them what their business actually did, they couldn't give you a straight answer. Derek, meanwhile, had no money to waste, so he simply didn't waste any. He couldn't afford to hire a programmer, so he bought a $25 book and taught himself to code. His desks were literally wooden planks balanced on cinder blocks. He built his office computers from spare parts. He wasn't trying to impress investors because he didn't have any. He only had to make his customers happy, and that became his North Star. He says, "Never forget that absolutely everything you do is for your customers. If you're ever unsure what to do next, just ask them a simple, open-ended question. How can I best help you right now? Then focus entirely on that answer. Your customers will never ask you to spend your time raising money or expanding into new markets. They want you to keep your attention on them." It sounds counterintuitive, but the way to grow your business is to focus completely on your existing customers. Just make them incredibly happy, and they'll spread the word for you. This is why he warns against waiting for funding. If you say you want to do something big but can't until you raise money, it usually means you're more in love with the idea of being big than with actually being useful. Because being useful doesn't require funding, you can always start right now with just 1% of your grand vision. Want to start a chain of schools? Start by teaching one person something this week. Want to build a movie recommendation service? Start by telling your friends they can call you for recommendations. Starting small forces you to solve real problems for real people. It lets you pivot instantly as you learn what your first customers actually need. Derek started CD Baby with just $500. By the second month, it was profitable, and it stayed that way every single month after. He has a simple formula for this. Ideas, he says, are just a multiplier of execution. An awful idea is worth -1. A brilliant idea is worth 20. But execution is where the real magic happens. No execution is worth $1. Brilliant execution is worth $10 million. So a brilliant idea with no execution, that's worth $20. A mediocre idea with brilliant execution, that's worth $50 million. That's why he says he's not interested in hearing people's ideas. He wants to see their execution. As CD Baby grew, Derek constantly faced pressure to become more corporate. People told him he needed lengthy terms and conditions, official employee review processes, mandatory sensitivity training. He got genuine joy from politely refusing all of it. He reminds us that thousands of tiny businesses, like a bait shop and a beach shack, do perfectly fine without any of the corporate formalities. Don't let consultants prey on your fears. You don't need most of that stuff. He also made a deliberate choice to build his business on many small customers rather than a few big ones. Lots of entrepreneurs dream of landing a massive client like Google or a government contract. But Derek saw the trap in that approach. When you have one giant client, they practically own you. You have to bend over backward to please them, and if they leave, you're finished. But when you have thousands of small customers, no single one can control you. If one customer leaves, you can genuinely wish them well and move on. You remain your own boss, as long as you keep the majority of your clients satisfied. This philosophy led him to another unconventional approach: proudly exclude people. Everyone knows you can't please everybody, yet most businesses try to be all things to all people. Derek says you need to confidently declare what you're not. By doing so, you earn the fierce loyalty of the people you actually want to serve. When big record labels called wanting to feature their famous artists on CD Baby, Derek would say, "Nope, they're not allowed here." He explained that CD Baby was exclusively for independents, musicians who had deliberately chosen not to sign away their rights to a corporation. By excluding 99% of the music world, he showed the 1% he was targeting just how much he valued them, and they flocked to him. This commitment to his vision also meant no advertising. When a salesman called offering to place banner ads on the site, Derek refused. He said it would be like installing a Coke machine in a monastery. He wasn't doing this purely for money. The money was necessary to sustain things, sure, but it wasn't the point. The point was helping musicians. He asks a straightforward question: in your perfect world, would your website be plastered with ads? Has any customer ever begged you to, please fill your website with more advertising? Of course not, so don't do it. This journey taught him that there's never just one way to do anything. He shares a wonderful story about his old voice teacher who would make him sing the same song in dozens of completely different ways: up an octave, down an octave, twice as fast, in the style of Bob Dylan, like he'd just been woken up at 4 a.m. It proved that what he thought was the way to sing it was just one option among infinite possibilities. He says, you should apply this thinking to your business and your life. You can't pretend there's only one path forward. Come up with 10 radically different plans. And don't feel bad if you don't have some grand 20-year vision. Derek never did. He just focused on helping people today. He tells this amusing story about a taxi driver in Las Vegas who told him, "I actually miss the mob." The driver explained that when the mafia ran the casinos, there were only 2 numbers that mattered: how much money came in and how much went out. As long as more came in than went out, everyone was happy. But then the big corporations took over, micromanaging every tiny detail to squeeze out maximum profit, and they sucked all the joy out of the place. Derek took that wisdom to heart. He never tracked his growth rate or worried about retained earnings. He just knew there was money in the bank, and he was helping people. He asks, isn't that enough? This forces you to confront a deeper question. How do you measure your own success? For some people, it's money. For others, it's influence or creative output. For Derek, it was how many useful things he created. He says it's crucial to figure this out beforehand, so you can stay focused on what's genuinely important to you, not what others think you should be chasing. His core philosophy became, care about your customers more than you care about yourself. At a conference once, someone asked him what he'd do if musicians no longer needed CD Baby. He replied, that would be fantastic. I'd just shut it down and go back to making music. The person looked shocked. But to Derek, it was obvious. Your business exists to solve a problem. If the problem gets solved, your business should be willing to gracefully step aside for your customers' sake. He shares another business philosophy. Act like you don't need the money. When someone's clearly doing something purely for the money, people can feel it. It comes across as desperate. But when you're doing something out of genuine love, being generous and trusting, people naturally want to support you. If you structure your business like you don't need the money, ironically, it'll probably come your way. As the company expanded, Derek had to learn how to manage people, and he made some painful mistakes along the way. One lesson was, don't punish everyone for one person's mistake. He talks about walking into a diner covered in angry signs. No refunds, no cell phones, restroom for customers only. Every time one customer upset the owner, He created a new rule, punishing all future customers forever. It's a natural, defensive reaction, but a terrible way to run a business. When one customer wrongs you, he says, remember the 100,000 who didn't. Learn to let it go. He also learned the importance of remembering there's a real person on the other side of every interaction. In the anonymous world of the internet, we forget that our words affect an actual human being, someone probably a lot like us. He shares this heartbreaking story about a friend who ran a small business and received a brutal 10-page rant from a client. His friend was absolutely devastated, spent her entire weekend in bed crying. When she finally worked up the courage to call the client, they cheerfully said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I was just in a bad mood and figured no one would actually read it anyway." We have to remember there's always a person on the receiving end. This is why clear communication matters so much. When he had to write an email going out to 2 million customers, he learned that one unclear sentence could generate $5,000 in support costs from confused replies. It forced him to be incredibly precise with his words. But this attention to communication also led to his greatest marketing success. The standard "your order has shipped" email felt boring and impersonal. So he spent 20 minutes writing a silly, playful version that started, "Your CD has been gently removed from our CD baby shelves with sterilized contamination-free gloves and placed onto a satin pillow." It went on to describe a team of 50 employees inspecting the CD, a Japanese packing specialist lighting a ceremonial candle, and the entire town of Portland gathering to wave "Bon voyage" as the package departed. That one ridiculous email became legendary. It generated thousands of new customers. People posted it on their blogs, shared it with friends, talked about it constantly. It was a powerful reminder that often the tiniest, most human details are what truly delight people. He implemented other small touches that made a huge difference. Answering the phone within 2 rings, putting the customer's name in the from field of confirmation emails like "CD Baby loves Susan," and having a policy that they'd do anything for a pizza if a musician needed a special favor. Once, a customer jokingly requested a rubber squid with his order. By pure coincidence, another customer from Korea had randomly sent them a package of dried squid, so they included it in the box. The customer was so thrilled he made a video about it that went viral. As the company grew from 1 person to 8 employees, Derek found himself working from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, 7 days a week. Every 5 minutes, someone needed his input on something. He had become the bottleneck for everything. He was heading toward complete burnout. He realized he had to delegate, or he'd collapse. So he started a new approach. The next time an employee came to him with a question, he called everyone together. He answered the question, but more importantly, he explained the philosophy behind his answer. "Always do whatever makes the customer happiest," he'd say. "You have my complete permission to make these calls yourself." He had someone document the situation and the underlying philosophy in a manual. He did this consistently for 2 months. Eventually, there were no more questions. Everyone understood the guiding principles and could make decisions independently. He had successfully made himself unnecessary to the daily operations. This freed him up to stop working in the business and start working on the business, improving systems, innovating, thinking strategically. His company grew from 1 million to 20 million in revenue while he was working from home, miles away from the office. He learned the crucial difference between being self-employed, where you can never take a day off, and being a business owner, where the business actually runs better without you. But this led to its own set of problems. He learned to trust people, but also to verify their work. He hired someone for a critical role, delivering music files to digital stores like iTunes. The instruction was crystal clear. Every album, to every company, every week. No exceptions. The guy agreed. Derek watched him for a few weeks, saw things seemed fine, and shifted his attention elsewhere. Months later, he discovered that music hadn't been sent to some major stores in months. The employee was just backed up and hadn't mentioned it. The company's reputation took a hit. It was a hard lesson. Trust people, but verify the results. You need both. He also learned the difference between delegating and completely stepping back. He tried so hard to empower his employees that he essentially gave away all his authority. They voted on their own healthcare plan. They even voted on their own profit-sharing arrangement. Turns out they had voted to give themselves all of the company's profits. When Derek had to cancel the program, he suddenly became the villain. The relationship completely broke down. It was 85 employees against him. He had delegated, but he had also abandoned his responsibility as the owner. This experience, combined with the sheer size the company had reached, began to weigh heavily on him. The joy had evaporated. He was a musician, a creator, a programmer at heart. He loved the process of making things. He shares this story about learning to sing. For 15 years, people told him he just wasn't a singer. But he practiced every single day, played 1,000 shows, and eventually became genuinely good. The point wasn't to have a naturally good voice. It was to become a good singer through dedication. He felt the same way about programming for CD Baby. He insisted on doing it himself, even when his employees got frustrated that features weren't being added fast enough. But he loved the process. He says the whole point of doing anything is because it makes you happy. In the end, it's about who you want to be, not what you want to have. By 2008, he had taken CD Baby far beyond anything he'd originally imagined. But when he thought about his plans for the future, nothing excited him. It all felt like a lot of hard work for diminishing returns. That same week, 3 different companies happened to call, asking if he'd consider selling. He'd always immediately said no. But this time, when he sat down with his journal and honestly asked himself, "What if I actually sold?" the answer surprised him. He felt relief. He realized the bigger challenge now wasn't holding on. It was letting go. He sold the company for $22 million. But here's the thing. He didn't need the money. He lives an incredibly simple life. No house, no car. The less he owns, the happier he feels. So he created a charitable trust. He put the entire sale amount into it. The trust is dedicated to music education. While he's alive, it pays him a small percentage each year, more than enough for his simple lifestyle. The rest will support musicians for generations to come. He quotes author Joseph Heller, who, when attending a party at a billionaire's mansion, was asked if it bothered him that the host made more in a day than Heller's novel earned in its entire lifetime. Heller replied, "I have something he'll never have, enough." Derek had found his enough. His final lesson circles back to where we started. Whatever you create, it's your creation. You get to make the rules. Make it your personal dream come true. You don't have to want to be a billionaire. You don't have to follow the traditional playbook. Pay attention to what energizes you and what drains you. If staying small makes you happy, that's not failure. That's victory. For Derek, he was happiest with 5 employees, and happiest of all working alone. That was his personal lesson. You get to build your own version of a perfect world. So what do we take from this remarkable story? In a world constantly screaming, go bigger, move faster, raise more, Derek Sivers' journey is a quiet, powerful whisper asking, what if you just made something that makes you genuinely happy? The most profound idea in this book, at least for me, is thinking of a business as your own personal utopia. We usually think of business as this rigid, formal thing with unchangeable rules. But Derek reminds us it's actually a creative act. You're the artist. You decide what the rules are. Want to pay your suppliers the same day you get their invoice? Go ahead. Want to answer every customer email with a haiku? Sure. Want to build a company that never exceeds 10 employees because that's the size that feels right to you? Absolutely. This isn't about being irresponsible. It's about being intentional. It's about building a business that serves your life, not consuming it. The second lesson that really hits home is the hell yeah or no principle. In our world of endless opportunities, and constant distractions. This is more than just a productivity hack. It's a filter for your soul. It forces you to be honest about what truly excites you. How many of us have calendars packed with lukewarm commitments? Things we do out of obligation, or because we feel like we should. Imagine the focus and energy you'd have if you only committed to things that made you jump out of your seat with enthusiasm. It's a high bar, but potentially life-changing. And finally, there's the beautiful, straightforward lesson about caring more about your customers than about your company's growth metrics. The story of that silly shipping email and the random squid aren't just quirky marketing tactics. They represent a philosophy. They're about seeing business not as a transaction, but as human connection. In our age of automation and artificial intelligence, that small human touch is more valuable than ever. It's what people remember. It's what they tell their friends about. It's what builds genuine, lasting loyalty. So how can you apply this starting today? Here are some simple thoughts. First, take 10 minutes and write down what your personal utopia looks like, not in business terms, just in life. What are your rules? What makes you genuinely happy? What feels right in your gut? Don't judge yourself. Just write it down. This becomes your compass. Second, for the next week, try applying the hell yeah or no rule. Pay attention to everything you're asked to do. If it's not an enthusiastic, wholehearted yes, politely decline. Notice how it feels. And third, find one small, unexpected way to make someone smile today. Could be a customer, a colleague, a friend, or family member. Doesn't need to be grand. Just a little moment of genuine humanity. It's a reminder that the most successful things in life are often the most human. That was our look at Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. We've covered the main ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a photograph of a beautiful landscape. It gives you a sense of the place, but it can't replace actually being there. The real magic of this book is in those quiet moments when Derek's simple, honest stories make you pause and rethink your own path. This summary is a map to help you decide if it's a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about sparked something in you, I'd encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's like having a conversation with a wise and humble friend who might genuinely change how you think about success. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please consider hitting that subscribe button and maybe sharing it with someone who needs to hear this message. It helps us continue exploring these thought-provoking books together. Let's keep learning, and let's keep building our own perfect worlds.